I would like to thank you to invite us in this beautiful and dynamic city and country. City is like a jewel, and it is a great experience to be a part of this project. You might be very curious about my background. I think I need to say something about me. Basically, I'm a linguist, and history comparative linguistics is my major. And these days, what I'm interested in is Korean as a language, as a foreign language, and its educational technology and instructional method. Hopefully, I would like to write something about Georgian language for general Korean people in some day. Okay, let's start my presentation. Japan's 35 years of domination on Korean peninsula left a lot of remnants in terms of culture. Okay, as the later half of Japanese colonial period progresses, cultural exploitation accelerated. Before the liberation till in 1945, Japanese was the primary language in school. As a result, many Koreans at that time became bilingual, both Korean and Japanese. For socio-economic religion, Korean used Japanese rather than Korean, and it's produced strange phenomenon. After the liberation, the intellectual led by Hangul Society, Hangul Hakhae in Korean, started a movement to clear the remnant of Japanese language from Hangul. Korean Language Research Institute, 국어연구원, in 1984 continued this purification, but they were mainly separated from the public. It was biased toward formality, literary languages such as organizing data and publishing booklets. In this presentation, I will introduce representative Japanese remnants that currently exist in Hangul, in Korean language, and provide an initial idea for direction of Hangul purification movement. There is some examples you can see. Dai, I can read. Dai, it means table shape. We have also another in Korean Dai, table shape, but we very often use the dai. Or tama, it means bowl, egg, or electric bowl. Gensei, refute, but we also use those words. Some of the terms used in civil engineering or handicraft, etc., remain in Japanese, and it is estimated that a significant number of Japanese words remain if commonly unknown terms are included. This specialized occupation involving certain skill were introduced into Korean language as soon as the technology was introduced from Japan. So you can see the shida, it means assistant. We have also a word assistant, but we use very often shida or nogada. It means a construction worker, but it's like a slang in public. And waku also, we have another word in Korean, but we use very often frame waku also. In 19th century, when Koreans started to accept, we accepted new technology in terms, new technology terms from Japan. not directly from Western side. So, for example, we didn't have those new technologies such as telephone or train, and also the Western concepts such as right or liberty or culture. We accepted those terms from Japanese-made Chinese character. So there are a lot of words written in Chinese character and were translated into Chinese character as they came to Korea during the Japanese colonial period. For example, if you write sopo, it is read as gojutsumi, small package in Japanese, instead of being read as a Chinese character sopo. But also it's different in Chinese language. Xiaohao can read. At this moment, you have to understand the reading system in Korean. We have a very unique reading system when we met Chinese character, and in Japanese has another one, so katakana. Anyway, since there is so many numbers of numbers, hereby only a few of them. For example, 건물 or 수당, 입장, 주어. And so here is the examples. The 각서, 매점, 시합, 주식. You can see there is a Chinese pronunciation of those words, but we have a different way. We read it in different way. So, among the foreign words in West, okay, no. Oh, yeah, here. Foreign words in West, there are some words came from Japan during the Japanese colonial period and came into Korean with Japanese pronunciation, like battery in Korean, but it's from, in English, a battery. But not directly we accepted those words, we accepted from Japan. So battery is in Japan, it's Japanese language. Basket also. Basket air conditioner is we said aircon. So transformer to change a voltage, 도란스 we said. So yeah, almost all. Yeah. Okay. This. Kind of a food picture, so
it's very tasty.
Yeah, we starved. Almost all Japanese foods that are commonly found in our daily life have their Japanese names, but many people know that these are in Japanese: udon or odeng or tempura, mandu, etc. Our country senbei tastes sweet, but Japanese senbei tastes like a soy sauce. It's some kind of different. Etymology of manju, here is the example. It's this one. Manju is mantou, actually. It's from China. It's steamed bread with something inside like hingalgi. It's so called mantou in Chinese language. When this food came to Korea, it's called mandu, we said. Because the Chinese character mandu, we can read it. So among these sweets imported from Japan, for example, Yanggeng does not speak Japanese, but it reads Chinese character Yanggeng in Korean. Oden also does not refer to fish paste itself in Japan, but the name of a dish made with fish paste. And in Japan, fish cakes have a different name depending on their materials and shapes. And oden can be found in Korea, cannot be found in Japan. This oden can be said to be a completely Koreanized food. And this is oden, and this one. And this is Korean hinkalgi, it's a mandu. Yes. Yeah. Okay. As a conclusion word, 35 years of Japanese colonial rule was too much time to influence the culture of our country in order to appeal to the uniqueness of our country's culture. This Japanese word must be excluded, and in fact, many Japanese words have disappeared due to the Korean language purification movement. However, the reality is that even after such a fierce purification movement, there are still many words with Japanese root in our lives. Among them, there are already many Chinese words that cannot be omitted, such as 정치, politics, and culture, 문화. So it is not without a sense that words of Japanese origin are deeply rooted in our culture. So there is not enough time to afford to create a Korean language that could replace many Japanese used around the Japanese colonial period. We should refrain from using Japanese because it is easy to use Korean for a reason. This also shows the linguistic flaw of modern enlightenment, the birth of a concept of national language, Korean language, 국어, and its development. We should focus on examining how the concept of nation relates to language and society in modern Korean and Japan time. We should try to change one thing at a time while emphasizing with the public. This is my presentation, and because I'm a linguist, so sometimes I heard in Georgian language there is a lot of borrowing words from Russia. And me and with my colleague, I discussed about this. They said "psio," like a Georgian. So yeah, so it's not a Georgian language, but they used like Georgian. So yeah, it was surprised. It was shocked because the history.
The Georgia was also under this imperial kind of the occupation. First the Russian Tsarist Empire, and then the Soviet Union. Definitely it affected language, and we still have these remnants which are used in daily situations, but mostly in daily situations, not as a part of kind of the scholarly work or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. This is my presentation.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So actually now we have.
두시로 კვირეულს მიმართა კვირეულ 아우디ტორიას 안녕하십니까? 오늘은 좀 불공평한 그런 느낌이 들었는데요. 어제는 한국 분들이 안 계셔서 자신이 있었는데 지금은 좀 긴장감이 좀 많이 올라가네요. Today I will be speaking about Korean success in terms of national brand, which is connected to the topic of Korean wave. I had a lecture about Korean wave with the students. That one was more popular type content. This one I would like to review some successful policies Korean government implemented in order to achieve this global success in terms of cultural exports and in terms of national brand. So, as most of you are aware, Korean economic success is dubbed as miraculous. It is referred to as Miracle on Han River. The reason is that since the 1960s, when GDP per capita was under $100, it reached over $30,000 in 2020, which shows that in the short term of roughly 40 years, because it was high even in the beginning of 2000s, in roughly 30 years, it reached the level of most advanced countries in the world. Now, the Korean success is discussed in many articles and works, and we mostly are aware that it was state-led economic development. Korean state had clear policies and implemented 5-year plans to develop key economic sectors it deemed strategic. So when the process started in the beginning, they started with the light industries, then went to heavy industries, and so on and forth. So during this period, Korea was under more than less an authoritarian rule where the main priority was economic development rather than human rights or labor conditions and so on. So during this period, the Korean government had programs for incubating new industries, protecting the market from outside. So for example, while you had Hyundai cars initially that were not really good, but were really expensive, Koreans were not allowed to buy other foreign-made cars. Even in the beginning of 2000, when I went to Korea for the first time in 2002, even back then, if you were driving BMW, you were considered either super rich or super rich and arrogant, because it was even considered being like not patriotic if you drive foreign cars. So this continued for quite some time and helped nourish Korean industries. And the markets, when the markets opened, Korea already had competitive businesses that could really compete on the global market. Also, another factor was very close relationship between Korean government and big Korean corporations, or called conglomerates like Samsung, LG, Daewoo, Hyundai. They were in a tight relationship, working together for the development of the country's economy. So, when it comes to cultural sector, the first steps were taken from the president, first democratically elected president, Kim Young-sam, which was in 1993. And Kim Young-sam, when he became Korea's president, one of his priorities he set out for was developing the cultural industries of Korea. Before that, most resources and the focus was on industrial development. So Kim Young-sam's administration was the first administration to start introducing the policies to help the cultural sector. The first thing he did was in 1995, he abolished really strict censorship restrictions for the film industry, for example. Because before that, Korea had really strict rules for the films and the content, because everything was focused on economic development only. And it couldn't have some you couldn't show in film some hardships of people working in factories, for example. So that was the first step. And he also pushed the conglomerates like LG, Hyundai, Daewoo to establish film businesses. So those companies, big companies in Korea, most foreigners are not aware, but the conglomerates, they are still doing business in many areas. So when I arrived in Korea, I saw like Samsung cars and LG toothpaste and things like that. And at that period, the Kim Young-sam administration, the first civilian president basically, asked the conglomerates to establish film industries, film business. So they actually, most of them, established some kind of divisions or subsidiaries for film production. This enterprise was very short-lived because of the Asian crisis. Asian financial crisis, during that time, under IMF requirements, they had to restructure and abandon those subsidiaries and businesses in most cases. However, what happened is, because the conglomerates were rich companies and they attracted great talent from Korea, within Korea and outside Korea for those businesses, there was a spillover of workforce. And there were many people who started there and then moved out and started their own film business or started working in other companies. And when the next president, Kim Dae-jung, came, he also continued this policy of supporting the cultural industries. They started directly funding range of related sectors, whether it's film industry or there was, back at that time, the gaming industry was also starting to boom. The transformation, the idea was to transform the industrial economy, the economy that only produces cars and washing machines, into a more knowledge-based economy to bring more value to the country. So during Kim Dae-jung's presidency, the Ministry of Economy budget increased substantially and reached 1% of the whole government budget. It also, they also implemented two comprehensive cultural plans focused on building infrastructure for distribution of cultural content. Also some educational programs, and also helped promote Korean-made cultural content outside, thus helping them export their products. So for example, if you had a small company who produced like a movie, they do not have the ability to organize distribution and export this film outside Korea, then the government, Ministry of Culture, would have channels to help them. During the president Roh Moo-hyun in Korean, it even accelerated even more. Roh's administration set up support for companies and products that were already successful. So what he did is that previous president administration supported the sector and tried to nourish the sector, while during Roh Moo-hyun's presidency, there was already a base. There were some successful products, there were some really successful films in the region, in Asian region. So what they did, they picked successful companies and pushed them even further. The cultural industries were included in the government's selected key industries for future economic development. And for the first time, separate divisions were set up for different sectors. So there was a division for gaming sector, division for the film sector. So more focused support. Also, the administration set up a goal of becoming regional, meaning Asian, leader in exports of cultural products. During Lee Myung-bak's presidency, the same trend continues. During this presidency, they also highly prioritized informational communication technologies, and what they also did was that they connected the cultural ministry's work in this sector with the infrastructure parts of the government plan, so to bring them into synergy and help push the cultural content into technologies globally. They also, under Lee Myung-bak, strengthened the copyright laws. So when they strengthen the copyright laws, it means that if you invest in cultural products, you have better chances of making money, thus giving the companies more incentive to start working in the sector. Also, during President Lee's administration, this time they set a goal to reach the regions outside the Asian neighborhood countries and reach the global markets, and become one of the top 5 countries in terms of cultural products globally. President Park's presidency, 2013-2017, there was a slight shift in a way that the policies were the similar support, but what President Park did for the first time, she directly, explicitly supported some popular culture, Korean. So for example, when she went to Mexico on a official visit, she took some Korean boy bands and girl bands with her and organized a concert there, which was like a president. Usually presidents don't bring with them some boy bands and girl bands with them. So she really explicitly showed that the administration understands the value of K-pop or this K-culture outside Korea. President's administration, so doing this kind of events and explicitly supporting K-culture, this global Korea trend went to a new level. During President Moon Jae-in, this is the basically last president because the president changed just 2 weeks ago, continued in the same spirit. Although during the Moon's administration, the focus on soft power part. The soft power means the power you can utilize from cultural products for your country in terms of international relations was more obvious. The example is that when President Moon visited North Korea on an official trip, he brought K-pop artists to North Korea to organize a concert where Kim Jong-un and all the high officials participated. And what is very peculiar about this event that in North Korea, it's a criminal offense to listen or to consume Korean cultural products. At the same time, they organized a huge concert that was really popular even with the officials of North Korea. Also, President Moon designated a Korean boy band, BTS, as a special presidential envoy for future generations and culture. Now, those of you who don't know, our students all know BTS and all the details, of course, but some of professors might not know. BTS is a 7-member boy band that last year contributed roughly $5.5 billion to Korean economy, which is 1/3 of Georgian GDP.
Can you share this? Just for one
Yes, that's when I had a lecture about K-pop. That's what the students said, that we need those 7 boys in Georgia as well. So
even 3 would be.
Even 3, yes. So this 7, that's the power of culture, really, when it becomes popular. So this global success of K-pop, K-dramas, K-movies, so it became that K became a brand image of Korea. So everyone, for them, it's not only K-pop anymore, it's K-movies, it's K-drama, it's K-cosmetics, it's K-books, K-cartoons. So a K is a new Korean brand. So this K first was just part of the popular culture, but during Moon's administration, they started using K as even in official government speeches and designations. Like when Korea's measures against COVID were considered really successful, they introduced it as K measures. So when they would go or with meetings with World Health Organization or other countries to do this mutual support for COVID disease control, they use this K measures as a brand of this way of government. So this is the new Korean brand that established kind of naturally through the Korean pop culture and then was accepted by the government as a Korean state brand name K. So this popularity of Korean pop culture is not only for soft power in terms of the government, where all the celebrities endorse some disputed issues that Korean government wants to really address, such as the name change of the Sea of Japan to East Sea, the disputed islands of Tokto with Japan. Because of so many fans of Korea, all K-pop fans know about that island. There's like millions and billions of people around the globe. And also, actually, the Charge of Affairs here in Georgia yesterday at our dinner mentioned that because of BTS, Ministry of Foreign Affairs doesn't really have to do anything. Like everyone comes to us, he says. So that is the soft power of the culture. But also economic benefits. Many mid-sized and small-sized Korean companies that do not have the money to advertise outside Korea are benefiting in measurable numbers from this K-trend. So when a small Korean company produces some cosmetics, they utilize this K-beauty brand and they reach much more sales and markets outside Korea. So this is it. This was my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you have any questions.
Excellent and comprehensive presentation. I would like to ask audience. Yes.
Hello. My question is, do Georgia have a chance to become like Korea? And what do you think? What can be the first step that Georgian government needs to do in order to start building successful industrialization?
So I had these discussions with friends around me about this because when I was preparing this, like what are you writing and so on. And the way I say things apparently are not popular with Georgian audiences because what I'm saying is what Korea did, that they understood the power of popular culture. They understood, the government understood that you don't need to put money and promote only traditional dances, for example. That through this popular culture, you reach bigger audiences, and then those audiences get interested in your country, your language, and culture more than if you do the opposite. So before the K-pop and K-brands, initially, actually in the early 2000s, most policies, the direct promotion from Korean side was Korean dances and Korean alphabet. So what they would do in outside Korea events, it was just traditional dances and how wonderful Korean alphabet is. But no one got crazy about that around the world. However, once you have this K-pop culture that is so popular, people got interested and then said like, oh my God, the alphabet is really amazing. And then they come to Korea and go to traditional dance concerts. And Seoul is full of tourists who dress in Korean traditional dresses and walk around the city. So what I'm saying, trying to say to Georgia is also that we need to have more open mind about the products we promote and trying to present to other people. Meaning, I had a discussion on a Facebook group, like we have this travel group, when someone made really weird looking hinkali, like different colors. And there were so many foreigners who went crazy, like, oh, so beautiful, so it looks cute. But 90% of Georgian comments were like, oh my God, what you're doing to our hinkali, this is terrible. Like this is, oh my God, this should be illegal, and things like that. So what I'm saying that we need to realize that once someone likes that colorful hinkali because it's like colorful, and they come to Georgia, they will eat normal hinkali as well. So we shouldn't really limit ourselves in presenting ourselves to the world.
Thank you. So, as you know, in Georgia, many people are singing, and almost all people are singing, and many of them are singing well. So, what do you think? Can Georgia also become famous and build successful global brands in the music industry?
Okay, I'm not the part of the music industry, but it's really tough. You have to consider that in last lecture I mentioned in the past 10 years there were over 450 Korea bands made, and actually more than half in the past 5 years. So the success rate is really low. So out of those 450, kind of successful are like 25. So it also, another requirement is a lot of hard work. Those boy bands just come out and dance, and most people think like, oh, what, just come and sing. But they really work hard. Like BTS success is not just their singing. Every day they communicate with their fan base around the world. So all of them have daily updates through social media and communicate with the people around the world. And I think we can do it because in Georgia we have many talented people. If we give the right push, I think, I'm not sure about the boy bands, but there are many parts that really could be successful. Like in the lecture I mentioned, I didn't know, I was told in Georgia and from foreign friends that apparently the club scene is very high level when Europeans look at, like I was told that many foreigners come to Georgia for the club scene. Like this is something I'm not into, I don't know, but I've heard that people actually organize to come to Georgia to go to clubs. So what I'm saying that if we promote that, when they come to the clubs, they will also go and eat khinkali. It's not going to be only the club.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. My question is, what do you think would help South Korea to maintain its cultural niche? Is it mostly K-pop and K-dramas merit? That's my question.
Now, this one is my personal opinion because I didn't have some scientific basis for this. But I think it was the K-pop that brought all the Korean cultural products to a higher level. But the success of K-pop, the global success, was due to the technologies, YouTube and social media, and Korea, people who are ready for that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for interesting presentation and discussion.
안녕하십니까. 저는 일리아 국민대학교 3학년 학생 리아라고 합니다. 이런 회의에 참석해 주셔서 감사드립니다. 앞으로 연어로 계속하겠습니다. 들어주셔서 감사합니다. Thank you. My name is Leah. I'm on my third year studying international relationships, and today's topic is the role of United States in the development of South Korea and Georgia. We already know that after the independence of South Korea and Georgia, the United States became a strategic partner for the both countries, which was a major precursor to Western values and democracy. Today, Korea and Georgia continue their close strategic partnership with the United States, which allows us to draw parallel in the political, historical context of what impact the third power has and what the outcome has been. The purpose of this topic is to underline the important aspects of United States which led to the success of consolidation of democracy in Georgia and South Korea. This is an introduction. At first part, I would like to talk about the South Korea closest ally, which is definitely United States. At the second part, I would also like to talk about the Georgian-United States relations in the 90s, and the conclusion part will be about the importance of the relationship between those three countries. If you ask which country is the strongest ally of Korea, it will certainly be United States. The United States has been seen as a top ally in many countries, and you may ask why. Of course, we can make various answers for this question, but personally for me, one of the main aspects is that the United States has the moral greatness to lead the free world, not for the sake of the power, but for the sake of the peace. The safety that comes from the United States is deeply connected to the rest of the world. And we have seen numerous examples that have shown us the quality of life in different countries. The countries that chose the West and had a close relations with them achieved perfect democracy, freedom, peace, and economic growth. We Georgians know that democracy is the main value for the fair, peaceful, and free life, where one's opinion matters. Therefore, for Georgians, Korean-United States relations are one of the most important examples to grow as a state that achieves a perfect democracy. We will be glad to present the history of Korean-United States relation, which has brought fundamental changes to the country. In 1882, Korea signed its first treaty with the United States on commerce, but official relations between two nations remained marginal. However, significant development during this period was the arrival of American missionaries in Korea, which sets the stage for a closer United States-Korean relationship. Then, on June 25 in 1950, North Korea launched an unprovoked scale invasion of South, triggering a 3-year war that devastated the entire Korean peninsula. And during the war, the international community, the United Nations and United States made enormous sacrifice to help defend South Korea, and Koreans now remain profoundly grateful for this. In 1953, the United States and the Republic of Korea signed a mutual defense treaty. Under the agreement, the United States military have maintained a continuous presence in the South Korea. Today, there are 50 military bases in the country, and currently South Korean forces would fall under the United States control if the war resumed. In addition to this, South Korean relationship with the United States is an example for Georgia. Georgia is also a country which aims for the genuine democracy and secure future. Looking over the development of last decades in Korea, we must underscore that long-standing security alliance and partnership between South Korea and the United States has been one of the pillars of successful nation-building process. The United States and Republic of Korean military alliance came about the most direct as a result of Korean War. During the war, South Korean forces put under the operational control of American-led UN command, and following the war, control was transferred to United States forces that remained stationed in Korea. We mentioned before, according to the terms of the treaty, the United States was committed to come to defense of Republic of Korea in case of an attack. The alliance has played a pivotal role not only in defense of Korean, but also by contributing significantly to peace and stability in the Northeast Asia. Moreover, the stable environment provided by the United States and Korea Security Alliance has allowed Americans to concentrate on the critical issues of economic and social development. Korean United States ties has also been reinforced by the fundamental values these two societies share, such as belief in democracy, market economy, and respect for the human rights. At the same time, Korean culture is beginning to have a great impact in America. This successful integration of so many Koreans into United States society will only depend affinity between these two countries. Despite its origins in the era of conflict, the Korean-United States relationship has developed and deepened over the decades. Today, these two nations continue to work together on serious challenges, both regional and global. We hope that friendship will continue far into the future, providing great benefits to both parties. Now, let's move to the Georgia. As for Georgia itself, the situation here is slightly different. Events in Georgia took place later than in South Korea. Yet the aspiration for defense and democracy are the same as were in South Korea. And let's start from the establishment of diplomatic relations. At first, the United States established diplomatic relations with Georgia in 1992, following Georgia's 1991 independence from the Soviet Union. Since 1991, Georgia has made impressive progress fighting corruption, developing modern state institutions, and enhancing global security. The United States is committed to helping Georgia deepen Western ties and strengthen its democracy institutions. From the very first day of the restoration of Georgia's state independence in 1992, the United States has a really big role in the country's political and economical development. But in the early days, United States assistance was primarily humanitarian, including food and medicine. As situation stabilized, the United States adjusted their support to meet the priorities identified by Georgian counterparts. And as we mentioned before, as Georgia has grown and matured as a state over the years, United States assistance has changed as well, always aligned with the people of Georgian needs and priorities. Much of the United States assistance these days is less obvious than previously. That it should be as Georgia, compared to the early years of independence has developed its own abilities and resources to provide for the country needs. Now, the United States is a strong supporter of Georgia's territorial integrity and European and Euro-Atlantic integration. Yes, Georgia's, and then let's move to the conclusion, because I don't have much time. And also, you may ask why United States and South Korean relationship is really important for Georgia. The answer to this question is quite easy to understand. It is important because the protection of democracy in the region. Given the fact that human rights are being violated in North Korea, and at the same time the situation is not so favorable in China in terms of democracy, we understand the importance of democracy in South Korea, and one of the guarantor of this is security of the United States. The higher democracy is in the South Korea, the weaker the totalitarian regimes are in the region, because democracy is contagious. Why did the war begin in Georgia in 2008, you may ask? Because Georgian democracy was changing, and with this change, the process was becoming frightening for Russia. The war in Ukraine started for the same exact reason. Therefore, for Georgians, close relations with both United States and South Korea are very important to us. I also want to mention that American influence over the Republic of Korea has been vast and extended into almost every aspect of Korean life. Over the years, military alliance, economic partnership, and close political relations between these two countries have all made the United States an inevitable factor in shaping the course of events in the South Korea. Thank you. This is used literature. Thank you for your attention.
My name is Subong Shin from the Inha University in Korea. I'm the professor in the Department of Civil Engineering. It's my pleasure to have this chance of presentation in Georgia. It's really interesting workshop, conference actually. Before starting my presentation, you talked about the relationship between Korea and USA. At this moment, the president of the John Biden is visiting Korea, and maybe he is meeting with the new president of Korea as his first visit to a foreign country. Yesterday, one of my colleagues, Professor Min, talked about a very interesting story. French people come to Georgia to drink wine, and then Swiss people come to Georgia to climb mountains, and the Italian come to Georgia to eat food, and then the Spanish come to Georgia to dance with you. So the BTS, you can have some chance of like the BTS teams, 방탄소년단, in the future in Georgia. So anyway, let me briefly introduce the Korea's development after the World War II. The population of the Korea just after the World War II was about 20 million, but it became doubled up after 40 years, and then 2010, the population of Korea was almost 50 million. But after that, the population is gradually dropping down because the youngsters do not have many children after marriage. Okay? So anyway, that's the worldwide trend. But it's around 50 million in South Korea and about 30 million in North Korea, I guess. But our GNP per capita, gross national product per capita per person, just after the Korean War, just before the Korean War, is around less than $40 US dollars, far less than the average of the world. You can see the green color over there is the average of the world, and red color is the OECD countries' average. So the Korea was one of the poorest country in the world at that time, even during the 1960s, we were very poor at that time. The GMP was around $100 about. But as you can see, the 1988, we hosted Olympic Games in Korea, Seoul Olympic Game. So we could hit around the same amount of GMP with world average at that time. And then after that, the GMP of Korea could increase, a little drop down after that due to the economic crisis in Asia. But at this moment, around 2002, we had Korea-Japan World Cup. We hosted it. And then in 2018, we had the Winter Olympic in Korea. So we could gradually growing the GMP in Korea. And if you look at some more detail, in 1945, after Second World War, our GMP was about $40, very, very low. And even 1960s, we had about $80. But as you can see, the government read, as the professor already explained, read the industrial development starting from late of 1960s. You can see the photos on the right-hand upside. That was the photo of Seoul city in the 1960s. You cannot see many cars on the road. They started to construct the buildings, but the common in that time, even the outside of Seoul is like the most poor kind of things. But anyway, government led the industrial revolution starting from the 1970s. In 1970, we opened the express highway between the major cities in Korea. Then maybe opened some logistics, traffics between the major cities. And then they constructed some shipbuilding companies and the heavy industries and the chemical industries during the 1970s. That could be the momentum for developing our country, I guess. So in the 1980s, Hyundai company made automobiles, and then the Daewoo company, Kia company made automobiles, and then gradually increased. In the 1990s, we focused on semiconductor and IT technologies, and then in 2004, we completed the express train, KTX in Korea, that made more speed up. The transportation could be more speed up at that time. And then last year, the GMP per capita could hit $35,000. That is a little over of OECD average. So it's growing up a little and faster in Korea at this moment. So you can see the photo on the right-hand side. That's the current Seoul metropolitan city. Is much more different from 1960s. Okay? So as already explained, K-culture is very popular. So you can see BTS on the screen, and also the girl groups, and the Minami is the Oscar winner last year, and then also the Squid Game was very popular. My favorite girl group is 21, actually. I don't care. 21 is my favorite girlfriend. They disbanded a couple of years ago, but the good news is they reorganized a couple months ago. They had a show in LA, I guess. So I really interesting to see performance sooner or later in Korea. So let's come back to our topic, my topic about engineering. So the engineering is the key factor for the development of our Korea industry and Korea developments. Especially engineering education is a very key point to foster human resources necessary for national development. But nowadays, the paradigm shift of the industry is very fast, more faster than university change, renovation, and more faster than government policy change. So especially in 21st century, the industrial revolution is very fast, too fast to catch up with the current system of engineering colleges. So many countries are focusing on revising and modifying and moving to different systems of engineering colleges, and especially in engineering education systems. And then even in Korea, we are trying to catch up with the worldwide trend to revise our curriculums and extracurricular activities and some teaching methods. We already experienced during the last 2 years of the COVID-19 situation. We had hybrid systems, learning systems, or some online systems. So it's changing very fast. You know, even USA, they have some global challenges scholars program. They opened it a couple of years ago with 14 grand challenges by the National Academy of Engineers. So world is changing very fast about the educations at this time, about related to engineering education. Before starting my presentation, I want to briefly introduce 3 the universities that could start with the engineering colleges. The first one seems to be, in my the survey, Hanyang University started from Hanyang Institute of Technology of Hanyang Technical College. Even during the Japanese colony period, 1939, they opened it. And the second one is Seoul National University. They opened it 1946, but they collected some of the colleges already existing in Seoul area during the Japanese colony. And Inha University, the third university who started from the engineering college around the Seoul capital area. The name of Inha came from the combination of the 2 initials, Incheon and Hawaii. That's the name of the Inha. So some of you may know it, but because our university was established by the donation from Korean immigrants to Hawaii, they left from Incheon Harbor in 1901, even before Japanese colony. So they had very hard work at Hawaii, and they collected money after Korean War. Korea was totally destroyed, so they want to make some good university like MIT in USA, so they donated the money to the first president of Korea. Actually, he worked at Hawaii during the Japanese liberalization period. And then the Incheon city provided the land to the university, and also the President Lee Seung-man had some matching fund from government to the university. So that is the beginning of our Inha University. Okay. So today I want to briefly introduce 2 engineering education programs. Actually, there are many diverse engineering education programs sponsored by the government, but I want to introduce only 2 because of the short of time. The first one is the engineering education program with curriculum reformation, and second one is the very long period of education program starting from 2007 for fostering creative and convergent talents in engineering education. The first one is the program for reforming curriculum is called Convergence and Open Share System. They started from the last year. The period is for 6 years, starting from last year to 2026. And total budget for the last year, only 1 year, was the $68 million US. So they had the 8 consortiums together with 56 universities. So in other words, for each consortium, there are 7 universities for each different specific topic. So the budget is quite big enough for running some system. So they want to break down the boundaries between the universities. So one consortium is combined with the university in the central city, a central capital, and some universities, the district, the outside of the capital. So they combine together to run the systems. So they want to provide some new technology field to the students. Okay? So their main objective is within short period of the 6 years, they want to cultivate, government wants to cultivate around 100,000 new technology talents from the universities, because lots of requirements from the industry to have the AI talent and something like that. So they want to try to cultivate, foster some new talents about them. So they are working together with the students, universities, and industries to develop those kind of things. So the goals are written on the screen. You can read it. I want just skip it. So the field of the digital new technologies are 8 fields. The first one is AI, big data, semiconductor, future car, bio and health, realistic media, intelligent robot, and new energy businesses. So they are working very hard to make the systems at this moment. And Inha University is participating in the field of the future car at this moment. Okay? And second program that I want to introduce is that I am involved in more than 10 years in that program. That started from 2007. It's quite long, and it's going up to the end of the 2028. So in total, about 21 years. It's quite a unique program worldwide because more than 20 years support from the government for engineering education is not usually, you cannot find it in other countries. So the money is not so big. For example, this year budget is about in total 13 million US dollars, sharing by 13 consortiums with 75 universities, engineering colleges, plus the Research and Information Center for Engineering Education. Director is me, actually. So this is the quite unique program and more than 20 years program in Korea. And then more than 70 universities are working together to make something, okay? So the first phase is 5 years, as you could see on the screen, and the second year is 10 years. It's ended at the end of the February this year, and we are going to third phase years for 6 years. We just started it. We selected new universities, and the center is continuing for more than 10 years at this moment. Okay? So they are dividing the 75 universities into 13 consortiums. The topics are, you can see on the screen, IoT, digital healthcare, very similar to the previous program, but a little somewhat specific. The intelligent robot, smart factory, and mobility, display, material, semiconductor, AR, and VR. So those are very popular topics that the industries are really require for the university to develop to carry out for the students. So what I'm doing in my center is we are constructing a networking system to combine all the consortiums are working together. So between consortiums, they are exchanging the data systems or sharing their performed results, and then informations are shared each other. Also, my center is trying to develop some online co-op system, matching system between industry and universities. Actually, starting from 2012, we had Engineering Education Festival. It's called ITU Festa for 10 years. Last year and the year before last year, 2020 and 2021, we had online festival. But before that, we had offline. And this year, maybe we are still discussing it, but I believe we are going to have the offline festival around the November or October this year. Okay? So there are lots of the programs inside. One of them is the capstone design competitions. So the many students from 75 universities, they make their own products and they competing each other, and finally they come to the final competition. It's very interesting. They are producing many, many interesting engineering products through their capstone designs. Okay? So our center is trying to have some 5 strategies that we are trying to study on the engineering education for the development of the creative and convergent talents. And we are trying to support academic groups for strengthening the innovation capabilities of engineering education. And also we are trying to develop the online core program, and we are going to share our outcomes together within the consortiums and also together with engineering societies. And then we are working together with National Academy of Korea Engineers of Korea, and Korean Society of Engineering Education, and Korean Association of the Center for Teaching and Learning, and the 13 consortiums. Okay. So about the academy, we are trying to collecting some education leaders from the engineering professors and some education technology, and then we are trying to provide the group workshops and the visiting educations to every university if they want, and we are trying to provide the customized lectures on teaching method. So also we support some small study groups studying on teaching method, and we encourage them to apply their studied teaching method to their courses, and we are providing one-to-one consulting for their teachings. Okay? So those are the 2 programs that I can introduce today. Thank you. And then this is the very short slide on online co-op program that currently our center is developing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Shin. Any questions? Any comments? Please, Salom.
Thank you. So I have actually one question about the cooperation between university and industry. How this reached the level that it has now, and whether there was any role that the government played in establishing this connection between industry and academia.
Usually government does not want to have any role in between universities and industries. Usually they say you must have something, but they do not intervene between 2 sides. But it's not easy actually to go together with the industry and the academy side, because the industry wants something like the research cooperation with the university, and they want to hire some talented students from the university. So they provide some co-op program, and they want to provide internship because to satisfy their own purpose. But after they are working together with the university, if they cannot get some direct outcomes, they cannot hire any students. Usually they stop their cooperation with the university. So that's really hard topic, the subject to do that. But in order to succeed, the industry side is really seeking for some talented students for their area. And from the student side also, they are looking for the jobs and the intern jobs to the company they want to go. So we are trying to construct some matching program between industry and the students. And the centers from 75 universities are supporting the connections during the working period. Yeah. So the government, usually they do not play key roles in those kind of things. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
May I add, just on the same topic related to this cooperation between academia and industry? For example, when it comes to the academic programs, or when you work on academic programs, what type of the cooperation do you have with industry at that particular stage? Are they involved in devising the program structure, so which subject should be incorporated into the program, or how get the feedback from them, from the industry, when you structure your academic programs?
For example, the capstone design programs, the university must run that kind of the capstone design courses, and also for the competition, they have some student teams to prepare for their products. Usually, every university, each center has the connections with some family industries around the university. So they ask them to provide the subjects for the capstone design, the programs, and they some of the industries offer some interesting topics to the students, and the center shows those topics to the students. And in that case, the center persons usually ask the company, industrial specialists to come to evaluate what they have done. Sometimes the quality of the products are quite good, and in that case, industry side is very much interested in hiring the students or to work together with the students. In that case, we can have some connections. But usually what we are doing is we are asking the industry side to evaluate students' products, and then we are trying to provide some interesting topics that we can share together with industries. So the academic side wants to get some subjects from problems or projects from the industry side, but industry side is trying to focusing on hiring students or working together for the research side. So it's not the easy, but it's slowly going to be better and better. We are running more than 10 years, and the trend is changing. They are understand what they have to do in the future. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Please.
Hello, my name is Salome. You mentioned about technological festival, and I'm interested if it is possible for other countries to take part or work together, and if it is, how is it possible? If you have any information.
Actually, for the festival, many foreign students teams come to Korea together. They are demonstrating their own products together with the Korean students' product, and they are participating in the competitions together. So usually what they have done is the consortium, the key center invited the foreign university students where they have some link together. So in order for Georgian students to participate in the university like Ilia State University must have some link to one of the university in participating in the consortium, and then they will inform you that we have this kind of festival in certain time, so you have to prepare those kind of the products before the festival, 2 or 3 months before the festival, and then usually they can invite the foreign teams. The airport some cost can be shared between two sides in general. So the first thing is the Ilia State University must have some link to one of the university, like Inai University, which also has the center, so must have some connections with them. And then if they have some offer to participate, for asking you to participate in, then you can do it. But usually it's not easy to do that privately. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Are there any more questions? No questions. Okay. Thank you. Dr.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah.